What thoughts are you rehearsing every morning, your past identity or your future self? Are you using your attention to feed your limitations or your possibilities? Are you living in reaction or consciously creating your experience? Most people live their entire lives believing that the voice in their head is who they are. They wake up and immediately pick up yesterday's thoughts, thoughts of stress, worry, judgment, self, doubt, and limitation, and then unconsciously carry that same mental noise into the present day. They don't realize they've become hypnotized by the momentum of their past, but you're not here to live on autopilot, you're here to wake up, you're here to take back your mind. Now let's look at this deeply. The mind is like a radio constantly playing programs from past experiences, and if you've been through pain, trauma, disappointment, or failure, those programs become loud. They're the first ones to show up every morning. And here's the truth most people never question: not every thought is worth listening to. Just because it's loud doesn't mean it's true. Just because it feels familiar doesn't mean it's you. The first step to having a strong mindset is learning how to separate yourself from that noise. That voice in your head that says you're not good enough, you'll never change, what if it doesn't work out? That voice isn't the real you. It's a record on repeat. It's a survival mechanism your nervous system clings to because it thinks it's keeping you safe. But that safety comes at the cost of your growth, your joy, your power. So how do you begin to silence your mind? You stop identifying with the content of the noise. You become the observer, the witness. You sit still, even for just a few minutes, and you listen without reacting. You begin to feel the gap between your awareness and your thoughts. That small space, that's freedom. That's where transformation begins. And in that stillness, when you no longer believe every thought that arises, you become conscious, not reactive, not emotional, conscious. And in that state of awareness, you can begin to decide what stays and what goes. You realize that you can have a thought and not be ruled by it. You can experience a wave of emotion and still choose your response. That is strength. That is what it means to begin mastering your inner world. You must remember, a strong mind isn't a mind that never feels fear or never has negative thoughts. A strong mind is one that knows how to stand still in the middle of chaos and not lose itself. That's the difference. Weakness is giving energy to every disturbance. Strength is choosing not to. And you choose by becoming aware. When you begin practicing this, when you start becoming the observer, you'll notice something profound. The thoughts that once had power over you begin to fade. They dissolve, they lose intensity because they feed on your attention. And when you no longer give them your energy, they no longer have a life of their own. You begin to discover the silence underneath the noise, and it's not just empty, it's not just quiet, it's intelligence, it's consciousness, it's creativity. That's where new thoughts begin to emerge, ones that reflect who you're becoming, not who you were. Thoughts that inspire you instead of limiting you. But here's the part most people don't understand. This isn't a one-time shift, it's a practice, and that practice requires repetition. The mind has been conditioned for years, some people for decades, to believe in fear, lack, limitation, and survival. So when you begin this process, don't expect it to feel easy, expect resistance. Expect the old mind to fight for control. That's a good sign. It means you're disrupting the pattern. So the question becomes, are you willing to feel uncomfortable in order to become free? Are you willing to sit with your own mind and not run from it, not react to it, but simply observe it long enough for the noise to settle? Because when it does, when you no longer let every thought dictate how you feel, you've taken your power back. And once you take your power back, you'll never look at your mind the same way again. You'll begin to notice how most people are enslaved by their own thinking. They can't stop worrying, they can't stop reacting, they can't stop rushing, because they've never learned to watch their thoughts without being consumed by them. But you've started the process of becoming free. And that's where strength is born, not in force, not in control, but in awareness. A strong mind is one that isn't held hostage by fear. It's one that can remain calm when everything else is loud. And when you silence your mind, even for a few seconds, you begin to hear the truth underneath all the noise, that you were never the thought. You were always the presence observing it. This is where the real work begins. There is a hidden door inside of you that most people never open. It's not locked, it's not guarded, it's simply overlooked. That door is called asterisk the present moment. Asterisk, and behind it is everything your mind has been searching for: clarity, peace, direction, power. But most people never find it because they're too busy living in the future or replaying the past. Their attention is scattered, their energy fragmented, and when your energy is fragmented, your mind becomes weak. You can't build a strong mind when you're living in memories. You can't create your future if your attention is trapped in the anticipation of fear or the echo of yesterday. To strengthen the mind, you have to anchor it, and you anchor it by entering the now. Not as a concept, but as a state of being. You breathe into it, you feel it. You stop running, stop distracting, stop predicting, and you allow yourself to be fully present. But we've been trained to avoid this moment. We've been programmed to chase the next thing, the next outcome, the next answer, the next approval. We've become addicted to movement, to noise, to stimulation. Why? Because silence can be uncomfortable. Stillness reveals the parts of us we've ignored. But that's the point. When you stop and truly enter the now, you begin to meet yourself, your real self, not the story, not the mask, not the old identity, but the pure awareness that's always been there beneath the surface. That awareness, that's the foundation of strength. Because when you're present, you're not lost in fear. You're not caught up in assumptions. You're not running from emotion. You're right here, grounded, awake, calm. And in that state, the mind is no longer reactive, it becomes responsive. You respond with wisdom instead of panic. You respond with vision instead of habit. Think of it this way: the mind is like water. When it's chaotic, when it's stirred up by distraction and overthinking, you can't see clearly. But when it becomes still, when you center it in the now, it settles, and the reflection becomes clear. That clarity, that ability to see and think and feel without distortion. That's what happens when you enter the present moment. And here's what's powerful: the now is the only place where real change happens. The future doesn't exist, the past is gone, only this moment holds the potential for transformation. So if you want to rewire your mind, if you want to become stronger than your emotions, if you want to build resilience, it starts here. Now, not someday, not later, right here. Close your eyes, take a breath, and notice where your attention goes. If it drifts to worry, bring it back. If it drifts to regret, bring it back. Over and over you bring it back, that act of returning again and again. That's the workout, that's how you build strength. Not through force, but through presence. People think being present means doing nothing. But the truth is, being present is the most powerful thing you can do. It's not passive, it's not idle, it's a state of high alert awareness. And in that awareness, you begin to feel things you missed before. You notice how much energy was leaking through unconscious thoughts. You notice how fast your mind was running. You notice the emotions you've been avoiding. And instead of escaping them, you sit with them, you allow them, and slowly they begin to dissolve. That's why the now is a portal. It's the threshold between who you've been and who you are becoming. It's not a place you visit, it's a state you learn to live in. And the more you live in it, the less you seek control, the less you chase validation, the less you resist what is. You start to flow with life instead of fighting it. And in that flow, your mind relaxes, your body heals, your heart opens. This is not philosophy. This is a practice. And every time you choose presence, you weaken the old mind that lives in stress and survival. You show your brain that safety exists right here, not in control, not in planning, not in fixing, but in being. And that's where confidence begins to grow. Not a loud external confidence, but a quiet internal one that says, I don't have to know everything. I just have to be here. That stillness, that quiet space of deep presence, it doesn't mean the world stops around you. It means you stop being shaken by it. You stay grounded when others are spinning. You move with intention when others are rushing. And that's the mark of a strong mind. It knows how to rest in stillness while the world demands chaos. This is where the shift begins every single day. You're either rehearsing your future or repeating your past, and you do it with your thoughts. The mind doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's vividly imagined. That means every time you think a thought, especially with strong emotion, you are literally programming your brain and conditioning your body to live in that experience. So when you wake up every morning and unconsciously reach for the same familiar thoughts, thoughts of lack, stress, fear, guilt, you are biologically anchoring yourself to the old version of you. You're firing the same neural networks, feeling the same emotions, producing the same chemicals, and repeating the same reality. This is why most people don't change. Not because they don't want to, but because they haven't broken the loop of who they think they are. You can't create a new life with the same thoughts that built the old one. You can't become someone new while holding onto the identity that was shaped by your pain. If you want to build a strong mind, you have to become greater than your environment, greater than your circumstances, greater than your habitual self. This means you must become intentional. You must start waking up with a vision of who you want to be, not just thinking about it, but emotionally engaging with it so deeply that your body begins to believe it's real. You mentally rehearse your future until it becomes more familiar to your brain than the past. You install new thoughts, thoughts of power, calm, clarity, creativity, and you practice feeling what it would be like to already be that version of you. This isn't pretending. This is the science of change. Your brain is malleable, it's designed to rewire, but it requires consistency. You have to teach your mind and body what the future feels like before it arrives. You must condition yourself emotionally to the reality you are creating, not the one you're escaping. And here's the truth, the old self will resist, that old program of limitation will come up. It will try to pull you back into the predictable, it will tell you you're faking it, that it's not working, that you'll never change, but this time instead of listening, you witness. You notice the voice, and then you bring your attention back to the vision. You bring it back to the thought you're choosing. And every time you return, you weaken the old program and strengthen the new. This is what makes the mind strong, not willpower, but repetition of conscious thought. When you fall in love with the future you are imagining more than the comfort of the past you're trying to survive, something powerful happens. Your biology begins to follow your intention. Your brain begins to reorganize. New neural pathways form. Your body stops living in the emotions of old trauma and starts responding to a future that hasn't even happened yet, but feels more real than the pain that used to define you. And that's when you know the change is happening, when you no longer wake up in reaction but in creation, when the energy you used to spend on fear is now fueling inspiration, when you're no longer asking, "What if I fail?" but instead, "Who do I get to become today?" That's the mindset of someone who is no longer a victim of their history, but a deliberate architect of their destiny. But remember, this requires you to show up even when the evidence hasn't arrived. This requires faith, not the kind that waits for proof, but the kind that knows proof is born through persistence. You practice the new thoughts daily. You speak to yourself like someone worth believing in. You visualize your future until the emotion of it begins to overflow. And that emotion, that elevated feeling, that's the signal. That's what broadcasts the new electromagnetic signature into the field around you. That's what aligns you with experiences that match who you are becoming. You cannot think one way and feel another and expect to create change. The mind and body must agree. You must think greater than your environment, greater than your doubt, greater than your fear. You must train your inner world until it becomes more powerful than anything outside of you. That's the process, that's the practice, and that's the foundation of an unshakable mind. The moment you become more excited about who you're becoming than who you've been, that's the moment the future starts to find you. Most people believe that emotions just happen to them. They think they have no control over how they feel because something outside of them triggered it. Someone said something didn't go their way, a memory surfaced, and without even realizing it, they hand over their internal world to the external environment. They react, they spiral, they become lost in the emotion. And then they think that's just who they are, but it's not. That's just a habit. Emotions follow attention. Wherever you place your focus, energy flows, and when energy flows, feelings grow. If you spend your time thinking about everything that's wrong, about what hasn't worked, about who hurt you, what you don't have, and what could go wrong, you're literally feeding the emotional state that keeps you small. And the more you feel it, the more real it becomes, not because it is truth, but because you keep choosing it again and again with your attention. So how do you break free? You stop trying to control the outer world and instead you begin mastering your inner one. That means you start becoming conscious of what you give your attention to. You train yourself to notice when your focus drifts to the problem, to the fear, to the pain. And in that moment of awareness, you make a decision. You take your power back. You shift your attention toward a greater thought, a new possibility, a vision of who you are becoming. Now, that doesn't mean you suppress emotion. This isn't about pretending or avoiding. It's about observing without becoming, feeling without identifying. You notice the anger, but you don't become it. You notice the sadness, but you don't cling to it. You let the energy move through you without letting it define you. That's mastery, that's emotional sovereignty. You no longer let your emotions run the show. You use them as feedback, information, signals guiding you back to consciousness. The stronger your attention becomes, the more emotionally intelligent you become. Because you stop chasing temporary feelings, you stop being triggered by everything outside of you, and you begin to notice that calm is a choice, that peace is not something you find, it's something you allow. And you allow it by removing your energy from what doesn't serve you. A strong mind knows how to sit in discomfort without falling apart. A strong mind can witness a painful emotion and say, "This isn't me. This is just old energy trying to leave." It doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you no longer fuel what doesn't empower you, and that's the shift. You stop asking, "Why do I feel this way?" and start asking, "Where am I placing my attention?" Because if your attention is on your limitations, on your problems, on your past, then your body is going to feel exactly the way you're instructing it to feel. But if your attention is on your vision, on elevated thoughts, on the person you're becoming, your emotions begin to rise to meet that new frequency. This is how you begin to recondition your inner world. You no longer wait for the outer world to make you feel better. You become the cause instead of the effect. You become so aware of your emotional habits that you catch yourself before you fall into the old reactions. And with each moment you choose differently, you're rewiring the brain, you're recalibrating the body, you're creating space between the trigger and the response, and in that space you choose growth. And let's be clear, this doesn't happen overnight. The old patterns are strong. The body is used to living in a chemical state of survival. It will crave familiar emotions, stress, worry, anger, not because they feel good, but because they feel known. But you're not here to stay known. You're here to become new, and to do that you have to teach your body what it feels like to live in a new emotional reality. One that reflects your future, not your history. You begin each day not just thinking differently, but feeling differently. You practice gratitude before the evidence shows up. You feel abundance before you see it. You embody peace before anything outside of you gives you permission. You teach your body that it's safe to feel good now, not someday, now, and the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, you don't have to try to feel calm, you just are. You don't have to fake confidence, it flows through you. You've conditioned your emotional state to match your vision. You've taught your nervous system a new way to be. And that's when the outer world begins to rearrange itself to reflect the inner world you've mastered. When your emotions no longer control you, your mind is finally free.